Sometimes the storm outside is nothing compared to the one inside you. At 2:17 a.m., drenched in rain and heartbreak, Eliza Morgan wasn't just driving through a thunderstorm. She was driving through the collapse of everything she thought her life was. One phone, one secret, one kiss captured in a photo not meant for her eyes. That was all it took to shatter 6 years of trust, love, and carefully laid plans. But as lightning lit the sky and her tires splashed against the wet pavement, Eliza made a decision. She wouldn't run to comfort. She would run to truth. What she didn't know was that the road she chose would take her to a forgotten town not marked on any map. A town that would unravel her past and awaken something she never knew slept within her. Willow Creek was waiting, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm showed no signs of abating as Eliza's sedan climbed steadily higher into the Adirondack Mountains. The rain had given way to a thick, swirling fog that clung to the windshield and reduced visibility to mere feet. Twice she'd nearly missed turns, her headlights cutting weak swaths through the misty darkness that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her phone had lost signal over an hour ago, the navigation system cutting out mid-instruction. Not that she needed it. Eliza had been visiting her grandfather's lake house since childhood and knew the route by heart. Still, the loss of connection felt symbolic somehow, a severing of ties to her old life. The clock on her dashboard now read 4:23 a.m. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on her, making her eyelids heavy and her reactions sluggish. She should have stopped at one of the all-night diners she'd passed earlier, should have fueled herself with bitter coffee and given the storm time to pass. But some desperate energy had propelled her forward, a need to reach the sanctuary of the lake house before she could allow herself to truly fall apart. The road narrowed, winding through dense forest on either side. This was the final stretch, the private access road that served the dozen or so vacation homes scattered around Mirror Lake. In summer, these woods would be alive with dappled sunlight and birdsong, the air sweet with pine and wildflowers. Now, in early April, before the seasonal residents returned, the forest felt primeval and watchful, the twisted branches of leafless trees stretching toward her car like grasping fingers. A flash of movement caught her eye, something darting across. The road ahead, there and gone so quickly, she couldn't be sure she'd seen it at all. Eliza instinctively hit the brakes, the car fishtailing slightly on the wet asphalt before straightening. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she peered into the darkness, seeing nothing but the endless curtain of rain and fog. "Get it together," she muttered, forcing her hands to relax their death grip on the steering wheel. Almost there. The road forked ahead, and without thinking, Eliza took the left branch. It was only after she'd traveled another mile, the path growing progressively narrower and more rutted, that a niggling doubt crept into her mind. This didn't feel right. The access road to the lake houses was well maintained, even in the off-season. This route was deteriorating with every yard, more dirt track than proper road. She was about to turn around when her headlights illuminated a wooden barrier ahead, emblazoned with reflective orange stripes and a road-closed sign. Beyond it, she could just make out where part of the roadbed had collapsed, washed away by what must have been an earlier storm. Perfect, Eliza sighed, putting the car in reverse. As she began to back up, the engine sputtered once, twice, and then died completely. The sudden silence was deafening. No engine, no radio, which she'd shut off hours ago, unable to bear even the most upbeat music. Nothing but the drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional distant rumble of thunder. Eliza turned the key again. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, but the engine didn't catch. "No, no, no," she chanted, trying again with the same result. "You cannot be serious." She dropped her forehead against the steering wheel, too exhausted and emotionally drained to even feel proper panic. Of course her car would break down. Of course it would happen in the middle of nowhere, in a storm, with no cell service, at an hour when no sane person would be on the roads. the perfect end to a perfect night. A tap on her window nearly sent her soul leaving her body. Eliza's head snapped up, a scream catching in her throat. Through the fogged glass, she could make out a human silhouette, illuminated by the beam of a flashlight. Her first instinct was fear, serial killers and horror movie scenarios flashing through her mind. But as the figure stepped back and lowered the flashlight to avoid blinding her, rational thought returned. This was unlikely to be an axe murderer. This was probably just a local resident, perhaps checking on the washed-out road. Still, her hand shook as she lowered the window just an inch. Car trouble. The voice was male, deep but gentle, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Something that hinted of distant shores and ancient stories. "It just died," Eliza replied, squinting against the rain that was now blowing in through the crack in the window. "I think I took a wrong turn. I was heading to Mirror Lake." The figure moved the flashlight again, and for the first time, Eliza could make out his features. A man, perhaps in his late 30s, with a strong jawline shadowed by stubble and eyes that seemed to reflect the beam of his own flashlight. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead by the rain, and he wore a heavy canvas jacket that had done little to keep him dry. "Mirror Lake is about 5 miles back the other way," he said, confirming her suspicion that she'd taken the wrong fork. "You're on the old logging road. It washed out last week." "I see that now," Eliza said, unable to keep the edge of frustration from her voice. "My phone's dead, and now my car is too. I don't suppose there's a gas station nearby?" The man's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Not for about 20 miles, but Willow Creek is just over the ridge there." He gestured vaguely through the wall of rain. "I've got a truck. I could tow you into town and you could get help in the morning." Eliza hesitated. Getting into a vehicle with a strange man in the middle of nowhere went against every safety lesson she'd ever learned. But staying in a dead car on a washed-out road, in a storm, with no way to call for help, seemed equally unwise. As if sensing her dilemma, the man stepped back further, giving her space. "Or I can go back to town and send someone official to help you. Sheriff Greaves is a good man, but it might take a while, and you look like you could use a warm place to dry off." There was something in his manner, a careful respectfulness, a lack of pressure, that eased Eliza's concerns. And beyond that, she felt a strange sense that she had met this man before, though she was certain she hadn't. "What's your name?" she asked, needing one more piece of normalcy before making her decision. "Ethan," he replied. "Ethan Hayes." "I'm Eliza Morgan." She took a deep breath and rolled the window down further, rain immediately sprinkling her face. "And I think I'll take you up on that tow, Ethan Hayes, if you're sure it's no trouble." No trouble at all. This time his smile was unmistakable, transforming his solemn face into something warm and reassuring. "We look after stranded travelers in Willow Creek. It's something of a local tradition." As Eliza gathered her overnight bag and laptop, she had no way of knowing just how prophetic those words would prove to be, or that in Willow Creek, the term stranded traveler carried a significance far beyond its ordinary meaning. She had no way of knowing that by morning, the path of her life would be irrevocably altered, or that Ethan Hayes would be just the first of Willow Creek's unusual inhabitants to leave an indelible mark on her soul. The journey to Willow Creek was a blur of rain-slicked roads and the hypnotic sway of Ethan's truck as it carefully navigated the treacherous terrain. They'd managed to secure her car with a chain from his truck bed, and now it followed behind them like a reluctant child, its dead weight making the descent into the valley a precarious exercise. Eliza sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket that smelled of cedar and wood smoke, a spare Ethan had retrieved from behind his seat. The heater blasted warm air that slowly chased the chill from her bones, though a deeper cold remained, one that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "So what brings you out to these parts in the middle of the night, if you don't mind my asking?" Ethan's voice broke the comfortable silence that had settled between them. His eyes remained fixed on the winding road ahead, hands steady on the wheel as the truck swayed with the wind. Eliza considered deflecting the question with something vague, a spontaneous getaway, a need for mountain air. But the events of the night had left her too raw for pretense. "I found out my fiancé has been cheating on me," she said simply, the words still bitter on her tongue. "I needed to get away. My grandfather has a place on Mirror Lake." Ethan nodded, his expression giving away nothing. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Yeah, well?" Eliza turned to look out the window, watching the shadowy outlines of trees give way to sparser woodland. 8 weeks before the wedding, too. Great timing. Some would say it's better to find out before than after. Some would, Eliza agreed, though the practicality of this thought provided little comfort. "Still doesn't feel lucky from where I'm sitting." Ethan glanced at her then, his eyes catching the dim green glow of the dashboard lights. "I didn't say lucky. I said better. Sometimes the hardest turns in the road lead us exactly where we need to be." There was something in his tone, a certainty, almost a prophetic quality, that sent a shiver up Eliza's spine, despite the warm air now circulating in the truck cab. Before she could respond, the trees parted completely, and they crested a small hill. Below them, nestled in a valley that seemed impossibly untouched by the storm raging around them, lay a small town. Lights twinkled through the mist like earthbound stars, warm and inviting. A church steeple rose from the center, its weather vane just visible against the lightening pre-dawn sky. "Willow Creek," Ethan announced, a note of pride in his voice. "Population 417, 418, including you, at least for tonight." As they descended into the valley, Eliza noticed something strange. The rain, which had been relentless throughout their drive, began to lessen, until by the time they reached the town limits, it had reduced to a gentle drizzle. The violent storm clouds remained visible on the horizon in all directions, circling, the valley like wolves around a campfire, but directly above the town. The sky was beginning to clear, revealing patches of deep indigo where stars still shone. "Weird weather pattern," she commented, leaning forward to get a better view through the windshield. Was all Ethan offered in response. But there was something in that non-committal sound that caught Eliza's attention. A carefulness, as if he were choosing not to say more. The truck rumbled down what appeared to be the main street, lined with storefronts that looked like they belonged in a different era. No neon signs or franchise logos marred the facades of these buildings, just hand-painted wooden signs announcing businesses like Callaway's General Store and Madam Winter's Apothecary and Tea Room. Old-fashioned lampposts cast pools of golden light onto cobblestone sidewalks, and every shop window featured a wreath of spring wildflowers, as if the entire town had coordinated their decorations. "This is," Eliza began, searching for the right word. "Different," Ethan supplied, with a slight smile. "I was going to say like stepping back in time, but yeah, different works too." They passed a small park with a gazebo at its center, and then a 3-story Victorian building with a sign that proclaimed it the Wayward Inn, Esther 1897. "That's where we're headed," Ethan said, nodding toward the inn. "Olivia, that's the owner, always keeps a room ready for stranded travelers. Town tradition, like I mentioned." "Do you get a lot of those? Stranded travelers, I mean?" Eliza asked, curiosity temporarily displacing her emotional exhaustion. Ethan's hands flexed on the steering wheel. "More than you might expect for a town that's not on most maps." Before Eliza could question this cryptic statement, Ethan pulled the truck into a small lot beside the inn and cut the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the soft patter of the now gentle rain and the distant sound of what might have been wind chimes. "Let me get your bag," Ethan said, opening his door and stepping out into the drizzle before she could protest. Eliza took a moment to collect herself, running fingers through her tangled hair and wiping at the mascara she was certain had left. raccoon circles beneath her eyes. She hadn't expected to see anyone tonight, had planned to arrive at the empty lake house and fall apart in private. Now she was about to check into an inn, facing strangers who would surely notice her red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks. But when she finally stepped out of the truck, the cool, rain-washed air hit her lungs like a tonic. It smelled different here. Cleaner, certainly, than New York City, but there was something else, too. Something almost charged, as if the atmosphere itself held a different composition of elements. She took another deep breath, feeling some of the tightness in her chest ease for the first time since she'd discovered Daniel's betrayal. Ethan was already unloading her overnight bag from the truck bed. "We'll deal with your car in the morning," he said. "Frank at the garage opens at 8, and he can take a look at it. Though I should warn you, if it needs parts, they might have to be ordered from Burlington." "Of course they will," Eliza murmured. But the prospect of being stranded in this strange little town didn't fill her with the dread she might have expected. If anything, it felt like a reprieve. A few days away from the wreckage of her life in New York, away from well-meaning friends and the inevitable confrontation with Daniel. She followed Ethan up the path to the inn's front door, a magnificent oak affair with stained glass panels depicting a willow tree. He didn't knock, but simply turned the brass handle and held the door open for her. The interior was exactly what the exterior had promised. A Victorian time capsule of polished wood, ornate wallpaper, and the kind of craftsmanship that had long since been priced out of modern construction. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the entrance hall, its hearth cold now, but ready for the coming evening. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over comfortable-looking armchairs and sofas, arranged in conversational groupings. The air smelled of beeswax and cinnamon, with undertones of old books and fresh flowers. A woman emerged from a doorway behind an antique reception desk, and Eliza blinked in surprise. She had expected someone who matched the inn. Perhaps elderly, formal, with a high-necked dress and wire-rimmed spectacles. Instead, the woman who approached was perhaps in her early 40s, with warm brown skin and a cloud of natural curls, streaked with dignified silver. She wore jeans and an oversized fisherman's sweater, and her smile transformed her striking features into something truly beautiful. Ethan Hayes, dragging in strays at 5 a.m. again? Her voice held, the lilt of the Caribbean, soft and melodious. "One of these days, you'll learn to phone ahead." "No cell service on the old logging road, Liv, you know that," Ethan replied, setting Eliza's bag down. "And I didn't exactly plan this rescue mission." The woman, Olivia, Eliza presumed, turned her warm gaze to Eliza. There was something assessing in that look, a depth of perception that made Eliza feel as though she were being gently but thoroughly X-rayed. "You've had a rough night, haven't you, honey?" Olivia said, and the simple kindness in her voice nearly undid all of Eliza's carefully maintained composure. "I'm Olivia Winters. Welcome to the Wayward Inn." "Eliza Morgan," she managed, extending her hand. "And yes, it's been not the best night of my life." Olivia's hand was warm and soft, her grip firm but gentle. The moment their skin touched, a strange sensation rippled up Eliza's arm, like the pins and needles of a limb waking up, but pleasant rather than uncomfortable. Olivia's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and she held the handshake a beat longer than would be normal before releasing Eliza's fingers. "Well, you're safe now," Olivia said, her voice slightly huskier than before. "And a hot bath and a soft bed can make even the worst nights more bearable. Ethan, be a dear, and bring Ms. Morgan's bag up to the Willow Suite." "The Willow Suite?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That's not the usual—" "I know which rooms are available in my own inn, thank you," Olivia interrupted smoothly, "and our guest deserves the best we have to offer after her ordeal." Ethan looked like he might say more, but then seemed to think better of it. He nodded once, and picked up Eliza's bag again, heading for a grand staircase that curved upward from the entrance hall. "Come along, dear," Olivia said, placing a gentle hand on Eliza's elbow. Let's get you settled. I'm sure you must be exhausted. As they followed Ethan up the stairs, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just transpired. Something in that handshake, in Olivia's reaction, in the quick exchange about which room she would occupy. It was as if she had passed some sort of test she hadn't known she was taking. The Willow Suite proved to be a spacious corner room on the 3rd floor, with windows that would presumably offer views of both the main street and the surrounding mountains when it wasn't still dark outside. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, piled high with quilts and pillows that looked cloud-soft. A sitting area with 2 wingback chairs flanked a smaller fireplace, this one laid with kindling and logs ready to light. A door in one wall, presumably, led to a bathroom. But what drew Eliza's attention immediately was the ceiling. The entire expanse had been painted as a mural depicting a night sky, complete with constellations picked out in what appeared to be actual silver leaf. The effect was breathtaking, like sleeping under the stars without the discomfort of actual camping. "This is beautiful," she breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "It's our finest room," Olivia said, moving to the fireplace and striking a match to light the kindling. "Reserved for special guests." "I'm not special," Eliza protested, suddenly uncomfortable with the preferential treatment. Really, any room would have been fine. Olivia straightened, the fire now catching and beginning to crackle merrily. "Ethan found you on the old logging road, yes? In the middle of a storm that should have made that road impassable?" "Well, yes, but then trust me when I say you are indeed special, Ms. Morgan." Olivia's tone was gentle, but brooked no argument. "Now, the bathroom has everything you should need. Towels, toiletries, even a robe. There's a kettle and tea things on the sideboard there. I'll have breakfast ready whenever you wake, no matter the hour." Thank you," Eliza said, suddenly too tired to question the strange emphasis Olivia placed on her words. "That's very kind." Ethan had set her bag down by the bed and now stood awkwardly by the door, as if unsure whether to leave or offer further assistance. "I'll be by in the morning to check on your car," he said finally. "If you need anything before then, Olivia knows how to reach me." "Thank you for everything," Eliza said sincerely. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." A shadow passed over Ethan's features, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Like I said, we look after stranded travelers in Willow Creek. Get some rest, Eliza Morgan. Things often look different in the daylight." With that cryptic statement, he nodded once to Olivia and slipped out the door, closing it softly behind him. Olivia lingered a moment longer, her dark eyes studying Eliza with that same penetrating gaze. "The storm has passed for now," she said, moving toward the door herself. "But there's another brewing on the horizon, a different kind altogether. Sleep well, dear. You're going to need your strength." Before Eliza could ask what on earth that meant, Olivia too had gone, leaving Eliza alone in the beautiful room with only the crackling fire and her confused thoughts for company. Too exhausted to puzzle over the strange comments and significant looks any longer. Eliza dragged herself to the bathroom, which proved to be as luxurious as the bedroom, all clawfoot tub and marble surfaces. She ran a bath so hot it nearly scalded her skin, then sank into it up to her chin, letting the heat seep into her tired muscles and the events of the past several hours swirl in her mind. Daniel's betrayal, the midnight flight, the storm, the wrong turn. Ethan on the logging road. This peculiar town with its Victorian inn and cryptic residents. As she soaked, the emotional numbness that had carried her through the night began to dissolve, allowing the full weight of her situation to settle on her shoulders. Tears came again, hot and silent, slipping down her cheeks to mingle with the bathwater. But they weren't the desperate, choking sobs of earlier. These were cleansing somehow, washing away some of the shock and leaving behind a raw, clean pain that felt like the first step toward healing. Later, wrapped in the softest robe she'd ever worn. Eliza stood at the window, watching as the first true light of dawn illuminated the town of Willow Creek. From this height, she could see the entire Main Street, the park with its gazebo, and beyond that, dense forest giving way to the mountains. The storm had indeed passed, leaving the valley bathed in a pearly morning mist that softened every edge and made the whole scene look like an impressionist painting. It was beautiful, peaceful, and for the first time since she'd fled her new York brownstone, Eliza felt something like calm settle over her. As she turned back toward the inviting bed, her gaze caught on something she hadn't noticed before: a small book placed on one of the pillows. It was bound in faded blue cloth, with no title on its cover or spine. Curious, she picked it up and opened to the first page. In flowing script, someone had written, "To those who find themselves in Willow Creek when they meant to be elsewhere. It is no accident that brings you to our valley. The roads that lead here appear only to those who need what we offer. Welcome, traveler. You are exactly where you are meant to be." Eliza stared at the words for a long moment, a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature prickling along her skin. Then, telling herself it was just a quaint local tradition, perhaps something Olivia placed in all the rooms for atmosphere, she set the book aside, climbed between the cloud-soft sheets, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Her last conscious thought was that she had meant to text Mia, to let her know she was safe, as promised. But her phone was dead, and somehow, that seemed like a metaphor for everything else in her life right now. Connections severed, power depleted, awaiting some unknown source of energy to bring her back to life.